Hello and welcome to Geekatplay tutorials. In this tutorial we're going to be looking at creating atmosphere settings, making fog, and manipulating clouds a little bit. So let's create our scenery. But before we start populating it, let's make something unique. So I'll just pop in a sphere here and squish it a little bit from the top. And then we'll add a material to this. And we'll just use Most Rock. This is from our Epic Landscape Booster Pack. And what I want to do is to go in here and edit this material. And we'll do a couple of things. We'll make it darker and go to the bump tab and reduce the height of the bumps to about 0.35. And also we'll go to add underlying bumps and increase it all the way to 100. And now we'll go to this layer and increase the scale on it to 1.5. So we've applied this material to this rock. And right now I want to save this object. And let's incorporate texture in there. And click on compress and save it as round rock. And enter its title in here as well. So now we have this saved object. Here in this preview picture you actually have some control over how your object will look. If you left click and hold, you can move it around, and if you right click on it you can rotate it, and if you press Control or Alt while holding down the right mouse button you can zoom in or out. So that is how you can preset your preview picture better. Let's click OK. So now we've set our object and we can delete it now because we don't need it yet. Let's zoom a little bit away and we'll just create a normal terrain. And let's just take the size, not the corners, because we don't need to increase the height and width, and we'll just expand the plane here a little bit. Let's move out to work with this and do that a little more, and right click and edit object, and we can take paint and dig and we can just, well, you know what, let's make this a little easier. Reset it and make our paintbrush raise and just click around here a little bit. Just draw in quickly. Now go to effects and add a lot of stones. So we have this modeled looking terrain. We could also do this through functions, but sometimes this way is easier and a bit faster, and good practice actually. So now this is our terrain. Let's create the material for our terrain. So we'll start with edit material, and here let's make the material an ecosystem. And now we'll add our object that we just created. Click OK. So now we have this object in here, and click populate just to see how many of them are created. Let's increase the scaling, and in density let's avoid overlapping. And click OK, and we have a few more in here. Click OK. Take our camera in here and just move it so that we can get a better look at these things. We'll go a little bit higher and we'll move it like this. We'll find just the right angle for our purpose. And this is what we have, all these round rocks in a valley. Right now it looks like it's just on sand. But let's go back to our terrain, double time click edit, and we'll set this default layer, and you know what? Let's load in the same thing as before. Let's set the bumps to 0 on that. Increase add to underlying layer. And I think this looks about how I want now. So now we have our valley done. We might want something on the horizon, so I'll just add a mountain and stretch it this way. Adjust its placement a little bit. Pull it up there, and we're putting a hill right in there. And now we'll just apply the same material that we had in the other terrain. So here we've made our rock valley, and this by itself has some nice character, but to really bring it to life we need some clouds and atmosphere. So to do this, we'll go to the atmosphere editor. Let's go to the Clouds tab and add a layer. And I want let's go with the low clouds. Click OK, and now let's take a quick look at it. And you can already see how much more this adds. But I want to have fog on the ground in here. So let's go to our altitude. But before we do this, let's go take a look at where our camera is. It's about 18 meters up. So now back to the atmosphere editor, and we know we need to set this lower than the camera to maybe about 10 meters. And have you noticed that if you try to slide this down, it won't let you? It stops at 100 meters, but you can go in here and manually type in the number of meters you want this value to be. And now you can see that it's already dropped here. But because they have a lot of height, we need to change this to maybe about 5 meters. So now we can see this fog on the ground between the rocks. Let's increase the cover and drop the density a little bit, and play around a bit with the ambient lighting. And sometimes on this preview the rocks will disappear and you'll see only clouds, and some machines will do this, and that depends on your refresh rate. So don't worry, your rocks are still there. And let's go to preview it, and you can see they're still in there now, just now hiding in the clouds. So our clouds are a little bit too high, so we'll go back and drop our clouds down to about 5 meters. So now they're kind of poking through. Let's bring the height down to 3 meters, and we'll reduce the cover just a bit and the density so we can see through these clouds. And this opacity, look at what it does there. And we'll just increase the detail and the variation and decrease the shadow density. And let's add one more layer of clouds, and we'll just add the same low clouds again, which will give us this nice overcast. But I want to modify those a little bit, and that is different than working with them in the sliders. So if we right click on here, we have our familiar edit material menu, so we can go and modify these clouds material. And in the lighting is our cast shadows. So if we disable that option right here, you can't change the shadow density. So we'll go back and enable the shadows, and in color and density is where you can play around with the clouds and their settings more, their scaling, roughness, and variation. Also here's our, and we'll just increase that a little bit, and here's our density function, and we'll just reduce that scale a little bit to make these clouds a little more spotty in the sky. So everything is about set right in here. So let's click OK, and now we've modified these clouds, and maybe we'll want to change the height a little bit and drop the shadows so they won't be that intense. And bring up that ambient light a little bit to remove the darkness. And I think I like how that looks there. So let's go to our light. And in there we'll move it a little bit more to the ambient light. Then in the sun tab, we'll drop the size of the corona there. Mostly what I want to see is this fog at the bottom. And again, this is a nice manipulation with the atmosphere that comes with the spectral model. Okay, and now let's preview what we've got so far. Here we have our image with the fog, which is kind of weaving through these rocks here. A little bit of creepiness creeping into the picture, but not too much. Probably we could add more trees or something here to make it a little more mystic in the background, or modify the mountains in a different way. And I think we'll go ahead and do that with the mountains. But before I continue, you see these gray colored lines? This is where our atmosphere is laying. So that is very helpful to see the relationship of our atmosphere to our terrain and the ground. So let's go again to the atmosphere editor, and we'll go to our clouds and go to our fog here. Now I want to explain here that our clouds are measured from the bottom, which is what the altitude is set from. So if I go in here and set this altitude to 1 meter, you see it drop down with only a meter between the bottom and the clouds and the ground. Then we set the height to 8 meters, the increase is going to move up, not down or not from the middle. And with this change, our fog now has become deeper, lower to the ground, and thicker. So now let's go back to our mountain background terrain, right click, edit object, and what I want to do here is open, and let's reset our function. Then we'll edit the function and we'll add a noise node. Move it here and let's make it ridged and reduce the scale, and I set this scale to 25, and that should be about right with this interesting kind of looking mountain now. And here is a bit of magic. We'll just tip our mountain up now and twist it a little more and move it in here. And now we'll just squish that together to scale it in a little differently. Pull it up a little. And we'll just kind of keep playing with it here until we get it the way that we want it to look. And we can change the material too. But first let's preview it so we can see how our first material is looking. We can see that that does look good, but maybe we want to drop it a little bit this way so that we can see a little sky. Let's go edit the object and increase the resolution so we can see a few more details. Now we'll go in here and change this material to rock SMD, and that's a bit darker. Also in the sky we'll increase the haze density and the fog ground density, and decrease the glow a little bit to make it overall a little more hazy. And because we have these clouds in here, I recommend we increase the quality of rendering with the quality boost options. This will increase the time of rendering a little bit, but you'll reduce a lot of the graininess. And if you go even higher, up to 4, and you can make it even higher by typing inside, the time to render will increase a lot, but the quality of the image will also increase. You won't have the graininess in the clouds or anything. And this is one thing that people have asked about. How can I remove the graininess from the clouds? You just go in here and increase the quality with the slider or manually. You know, I guess if you were really committed, you could increase it really high, you know. I guess if you had a quantum computer. So we'll just set it at 1 for our purpose. Well, maybe we'll pop it up to 2. And we'll click OK. And we'll go to Final. And let's see our final project. And here's our final image with a wispy sea of fog clinging to the ground here. It looks nice and smooth and pretty realistic. And already you can't see the grains in here. And if you pop up the quality boost even more, it will look even smoother in the clouds and dark areas. So the graininess will be gone. And those gray lines in our view help us manage our atmosphere altitudes and heights. And in the spectral atmosphere, clouds are not just clouds. They can be anywhere. They can be fog, layered, among the mountains. It takes a lot of time to render, but it's a very useful and very powerful add-on. Thank you for watching this tutorial. For more view resources or any questions you have, please visit us at www.viewtutorials.com.